Greetings, children of the screen, your friendly neighborhood nerd scum here once again, and welcome to the Batman I Believe in, the Bat-centric channel where we talk about anything and everything as long as it pertains to the Caped Crusader. And today, we're going to be talking about Batman Begins. Here recently, it had its 15th anniversary, and while this is not going to be a full-fledged retrospective, because we will save that for probably the 20th anniversary, I thought it would be fun to take a little look back at the film itself and my connection to it. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive into Batman Begins.
I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman!
Batman Begins was originally released on June 15th, 2005 in 3,858 theaters, including IMAX. Directed by Christopher Nolan, with a screenplay by Christopher Nolan and David S. Goyer. The music for the film was done by Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard. Cinematography by Wally Pfister, and editing by Lee Smith. The cast for the film includes Christian Bale, Michael Caine, Liam Neeson, Katie Holmes, Gary Oldman, Cillian Murphy, Tom Wilkinson, Rutger Hauer, Ken Watanabe, and Morgan Freeman. Right on, guys, so with all of the facts about the movie out of the way, real quick before we jump into my actual thoughts on the film itself, I want to give you a little insight into my discovery of this film and my kind of first impressions. So, the first time I even knew that there was going to be a new Batman movie, I wasn't very active online around the time this movie came out, and I had no idea. I hadn't heard about it. I didn't really read the newspaper or anything. I was living off in my own little nerd scum world. So the first time I noticed it was, God help me, I was going to the movies to see Alone in the Dark, the Uwe Boll movie, which, by the way, was my introduction to the wonderful and horrible world of Uwe Boll. Yay, right? But on the way into the theater, I saw that first poster for Batman Begins, and my mind just went boom, because at this point I had already kind of been out of reading comics for a while, and I just, after Batman and Robin, I think, a lot of people, I really didn't expect there to be another Batman movie, anytime soon, because that, was before we had this new revival. It was kind of starting, but at that point in time, normally, whenever you had a superhero franchise that the movies died, at that point in time, they were most of the time just dead, So I was really excited, and then I was able to find out that the movie was being directed by Christopher Nolan, who I knew as the guy from Memento, which I was really excited about. I was like, oh, that's awesome. And then when I found out that Christian Bale had been cast, I heard a lot of people were really upset about that, apparently, because, they just didn't see it in him. Especially, the thing he was the most well-known for as an adult actor was probably, you gotta be American Psycho, and then after that would probably be Shaft, the one with Samuel Jackson, where he's the rich white boy villain. So anyway, people were, but I was just no, he's a fantastic actor. So already before I went into the movie, I was pretty much sold on the concept. We got Gary Oldman, just I'm looking at his cast, and I'm just oh my god, this is just an overabundance of riches in terms of the cast. It's just crazy how good it is. So of course I went and I saw the movie while it was in theaters, and I absolutely loved it. From beginning to end, there were a lot of problems in the movie, and most of them I didn't really pay attention to on the first viewing because I was just so sucked in. It was so fulfilling to see a movie that took Batman just serious enough that I could really invest myself in the character, and a Batman movie that really invested in the character of Bruce Wayne. So by the time he became Batman and he put the costume on, I cared about the person under the costume as well as Batman, the superhero, mythical figure. It was a full package of Batman that I feel is one of the better interpretations of him on film. So yeah, those are my first impressions and kind of my first thoughts, so obviously that colors my opinion on the movie, but I did rewatch it, and now let's go ahead and dive into my thoughts on it looking back 15 years after the fact.
Tell us, Mr. Wayne. What do you fear? The world is too small for someone like Bruce Wayne to disappear.
parents' death was not your fault.
If you make yourself more than just a man, then you become something else entirely. Which is a legend, Mr. Wayne.
Okay, so as I said, I really enjoy this movie, but that does not mean that I am blind to its shortcomings, which it definitely has. Now, there are a lot of little things that I could nitpick about the movie, little things that just kind of don't work on a very, base level, but I'm going to narrow it down to, 3 things that I feel really do not work and hurt the movie. I'm going to move from, the ones that I feel aren't so bad to the ones that I feel are the worst. So, let's start off with the one that's not so bad, and that is Rachel Dawes. So Rachel Dawes is a character from the comics, but she only appeared in one story. She's never been brought back. She hasn't been well developed, and that story's pretty much been retconned out of Batman history. So they can kind of do whatever they want with her. Now, what I will say is that I think that she works just fine in terms of her narrative function. Her function within the story works just fine. However, I don't really feel that the character is developed enough for us to really have any investment in her or the relationship between her and Bruce. It doesn't really help that the two don't really seem to have very much chemistry on screen, and towards the end of the movie, when they do finally try to do some stuff with her and have her take down Scarecrow, it feels very forced and out of nowhere. Yeah, she's been spunky the whole movie, but it feels very manufactured, and at the same time it definitely detracts from Scarecrow's status as a villain in the film. A lot of people have said the same thing kind of that I'm saying about her with Scarecrow, but I actually think that Scarecrow is utilized pretty well in this film up until the point where she just takes him out with a taser and that's it. It's only really in retrospective, where we know that he's not developed further in the next 2 films, that it really becomes a problem. Because really in this movie, as they're just setting him up, what they do with him would have been sufficient, even with the kind of lackluster end to him. In the next movie, when he comes back, he should have been absolutely nuts and should have been a bigger presence, but we had to make room for the Joker, and we just never get back to doing anything special with him. But for this movie, he's fine. So as for my next thing, I think this is the thing that bothers everybody the most in this movie, and that is the device which enables the 3rd act climax of the film. So they've got cranes, kind of fear toxin in the water, but it has to be absorbed as an inhalant, so they've stolen the Wayne Tech machine that'll vaporize the water. They put it on the train because the water main runs, right under the train tracks. Okay, on a very base level, I understand where they're coming from, but yes, everyone is right. Human beings are made of mostly water. So the moment that thing started going off, it should be just vaporizing people like it's War of the Worlds or something, the one with Tom Cruise, just puff, and they're gone. So yeah, it's a problem, and there are very simple ways that they could have fixed this in the writing, or made it clear and done something else to achieve the same effect. So it's a problem. And there's really nothing I can say that kind of lessens how harmful it is to the movie. I just kind of accept it because everything else around that problem is so cool, even within that sequence. All the things that are happening are so awesome, and the rest of the movie is so good, I kind of give it a pass. However, when we move on to this next issue that I have with the movie, I cannot give a pass, and it is a problem that runs throughout this entire franchise. In fact, so much so I'm probably going to do a video on it at some point. And that is that you get, and I had an issue with this when I first watched the movie. The whole thing with the microwave emitter, didn't even think about it until a couple of days later when I was thinking about the movie. But this moment pissed me off in the theaters right before the movie ended. And of course, it's the moment where Batman tells Ra's, I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you either, and just lets him die. And I have a problem with that because Batman, as I know and understand him, knows that making that choice to let someone die is the same as killing them. If you have an option to save someone and don't, they are dead through your inaction. So it's the same thing. This is a different universe, and this Batman can be interpreted differently. But the problem is, this Batman walks around stating that he does not kill, and that moment with Ra's al Ghul isn't the main moment in the movie where he kills people. He blows up an entire building that we have seen is full of ninjas. Just full of them. He doesn't want to kill one guy, so he blows up the entire building. We never see any of those other ninjas again after that building blows up. Where are they? Did they all escape? No, because he'd be fighting them all the way down the mountain if that were the case. No, he drops Roz off at the little hut. Like, all those dudes are dead. The guy that he didn't want to kill is probably dead. And it's a problem that, like, goes throughout this entire franchise of this Batman running around pontificating that he does not kill people. But it is propaganda that is baked into his character. He absolutely kills people in every single one of these movies. In the second movie, he kills Harvey Dent, okay? Like, it's a problem. But what you'll find throughout the Nolan trilogy is that there are these characters that are very rich and they're very engaging, and all of them have a certain amount of character propaganda flowing from them that we as an audience buy into. It's part of their charisma, it's part of their mystique. But the problem is, like, when we walk away from the movie, a lot of us have problems kind of looking at that and being like, no, but, like, they're wrong. Or they're bullshitting us, you know? Like, and that's kind of what makes them interesting and complex characters. It's a whole other level to it that we're kind of ignoring. So, yeah, I have a big problem with the fact that this Batman, despite the fact that he pontificates that he doesn't kill, that I've only got one rule, like, it pisses me off that he kills people, because he absolutely does. Why is the only version of Batman we've had in a movie that doesn't kill people George Clooney in Batman and Robin? What the hell?
Things are worse than ever down here. What chance does Gotham have when the good people do nothing?
Nomex survival suit for advanced infantry. Kevlar utility harness, gas-powered magnetic grapple gun.
What's that? On the tumbler? Oh, you wouldn't be interested in that.
Spent a lot of time being scared for you. I heard you were back. But the man I loved, the man who vanished, never came back.
Okay, so now that that nastiness is out of the way, and I've done whined and all that kind of stuff, I can just get into the things that I think really make this movie work and make this movie excel. As I said earlier, this movie does a better job than any other movie that we've had of making us invest in the character of Bruce. In all the other movies, we've had moments with Bruce, and we've had little flashbacks to his parents' death or his parents' funeral, but this is the first time that we really get to see the Waynes as a family and kind of get to see just a little glimpse of what Bruce lost, and see that they were good parents, and see that they were good people, and that it wasn't just Bruce who lost, it was everyone who lost. I think that really helps in terms of emotionally anchoring us to him as a character, and being with him throughout the progression of the film, and even, like, taking us through the third act, through all the problems. Like, we're enough emotionally invested in that character that we're willing to go with the movie, at least upon our first viewing for a lot of us. I also think that the movie does an excellent job of showing what we've never seen before in terms of Batman's origin. Like, we've seen other moments from the Batman origin, like, highlighted to a degree, but we've never actually seen this, where we actually see him go through, we see his elements of training, we see his thought processes, we see him coming back, we see him getting to know the city again, and putting together the Batsuit, which is, seeing him put together that Batsuit is one of the elements that, even though a lot of those things are kind of pseudo-sci-fi-y, the elements he uses to make the suit, because we get to see how it's put together, it creates a believability in its functionality. Like, we look at it and we don't just think, hey, that's a guy in a rubber suit. We think that that's a guy in this high-tech armor that, like, is using it to fight crime. Like, we buy into it. And it's one of the first times where it isn't just an aesthetic choice. Like, they've designed a suit in a way that we as an audience can believe in the functionality and therefore believe in the world that it takes place in, and just further invest ourselves in the world. It's really brilliantly done, and I really enjoyed the Batsuit itself. It makes him just look like this kind of big, hulking beast. And then whenever he puts the monster voice on, which is version 1 of the monster voice, before it gets, like, over the top. Like, there's some moments in this movie where he does it very subtly, and I really appreciate that. So yeah, those elements are really fantastic. Christian Bale, as Bruce Wayne in Batman, gives an absolutely fantastic performance. And again, like, the subtle differences between not just, like, his voice, but his mannerisms and the way he carries himself in the different phases of the film really help sell the character's transformation. I also love the fact that, you know, his first few fight scenes as Batman are actually shot almost like a horror movie. As the movies progress, I kind of wish the action would progress, but despite what people say, I actually think this movie has some of the best action in any of these three films. Like, by the time we get to the movie with Bane in the third movie, like, the fights look so slow and sluggish, and, like, they're just unfulfilling, and it's ridiculous. And the second movie has some great car chases and stuff, but not a lot in the way of, like, great hand-to-hand combat. This movie definitely has the best action, and the way that they kind of physically verbalize the angst of Batman through his martial arts style is fantastic, using Keisei, which is just, you know, a lot of very blunt, just on-point attacks, you know, lots of elbows, lots of headbutts, lots of knees, stuff like that. It really works, and I really like it. It works for that kind of beast that Batman is building himself into in this movie. And beyond Christian Bale, pretty much the whole cast of this movie is pretty fantastic. You know, again, a lot of people will say that the weak link is Katie Holmes, but, like, I think she does fine for what she's given to work with. True, she doesn't have a lot of chemistry with Christian Bale, but beyond that, I think functionally she's fine. They just don't give her character a lot to work with. But yeah, the cast is fantastic. You know, Alfred in this movie is like the perfect level of emotional and supportive. You know, he's not too weepy, he's not too whiny. You know, he's great. Michael Caine just knocks it out of the park, obviously. You know, just everybody. I'm not going to go through the whole cast. You know, I know, everybody's fantastic in this movie. They just, right out of the park. You know what I'm saying? The visual style of the movie is absolutely perfect for what they're trying to achieve. Like, the majority of this movie feels very grounded. It feels like it takes place in a real world, but there are just enough hyper-real elements that are introduced in the right time frame and in the right scale for you to really make the transition with Christian Bale from Bruce Wayne to Batman, so that by the time he puts on the bat suit and he's fighting Scarecrow and he's fighting a bunch of ninjas, it doesn't feel dumb. Like, it feels like this is a real lived-in world. You know, the Narrows is just so cramped. I know that there's a specific city they based this area on, which is like an island city. Like, it's a crazy story. We're not going into it here. But the production design, the costume design, everything about the movie just creates this world that props up this Batman. It just makes it, again, feel like it could be a real universe, and takes you into the over-the-top stuff in a gradual way, so that you can just, like, follow the stepping stones of reasonability and believability up until we are at Batman point, and they're ready to introduce the Joker.
The Batman. God must be destroyed.
Guy dresses up like a bat. Clearly has issues.
Right on, guys. So there are a bunch more things that I could go into, things that I like, little moments and actual specific scenes. But again, this isn't the full-fledged retrospective. This is just me wanting to take a look back at the film 15 years later and see if it still has the same effect on me. And while the things that don't work in the film are definitely more noticeable over time, I would say that the things that work in the film have only made me more endeared to it. I definitely still enjoy this film as much as I did back when I first saw it, and if I'm being honest, this film is what kind of renewed my interest in the character of Batman, because as I've said, I was out of comics for a while, and a Batman book, Batman Fortunate Son, which there will be a video on at some point, was one of the books that made me leave, because Batman was one of the characters I really cared about. If they were doing that kind of stuff, I didn't really care at that point anymore. And with this movie, it made me, while I didn't jump back into comics for a little while, it made me keep sticking my head in there and seeing what was going on with Batman and a few other characters and things like that. And beyond the influence it had on me personally, obviously they had a very successful trilogy of films out of these, and it made Chris Nolan a definite name from an up-and-comer. You know, it put Christian Bale on the map in a way that he had not been before, and the style and narrative functions of this film have crept into almost every major blockbuster kind of superhero thing. Like, just even the narrative structure of the way we see the flashbacks and stuff. Like, Iron Man's got it. Like, Man of Steel's got it. Like, everybody was trying to replicate that idea and that concept and that delivery of kind of, let's make our superhero real, you know? And it's just a highly influential film, not just in terms of superhero genre, but in terms of a change in Hollywood and the change in perception of the way these films were being looked at. So yeah, again, I think it's a great film, and if you haven't seen it, I don't know why you've sat this far through the video. Go watch the movie. It's definitely worth watching. It's not till you get to Dark Knight Rises that everything falls apart, you know? So yeah, anyway guys, that's what I thought about it. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And if you like this video, please leave a like and share it with some friends. Also, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe so you can check out all the bat-tastic content we'll have coming out in the future. Right on, guys. Thank you all very much. Hope you all have a good one. Nerd Scum. Out.